Fatherhood is no longer a playground, it's a battleground. And when I met today's guest, it inspired me to step up my game as a parent. Welcome everybody to the Plank Session. I'm Justin Kershaw, and today I'm planking with another Justin Batt. Let's go.
I'm Justin Batt. I'm the founder and chief dad officer of Daddy Saturday and the Daddy Saturday Foundation, and I am ready to get my plank on with my man Justin Kershaw. Let's go.
Let's do it. So, brother, every movement has a charismatic figure that leads it, and you're up to something really big, a huge movement. But I want to know more about the charismatic figure. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my role in fatherhood was an interesting one. I sat there with my wife, and she was, in our first year of marriage, she was a teacher. And she came to me and said, I want to get out of teaching, but I don't know what I want to do. And I had a business background, so I said, I'll support you. Why don't you create a business plan? I left for a trip and came back, and she said, I want to do babies or bridal. I said, great, you got birth, you got death, and you get married in between. So I loved the model. And we settled on bridal. And we had our first child named Hayden Olivia, our daughter. And so we named the store after her, Hayden Olivia Bridal. And my wife, being an entrepreneur, ended up being in the store working on most Saturdays. And so I was alone at home with my daughter at 2 weeks old as a father going, what the heck do I do with this little girl?
I've been there before.
Yeah, man. Most dads have, right? and then we had a son 2 years later, and then two more sons 2 years after that in succession. And so I found myself eventually with 3 and 4 kids at home on Saturdays as my wife worked the store. And I was a father who was overwhelmed, stressed out, tired, trying to manage my time between my work life and my home life, and started to want to make a change. So I had a perspective shift, and that perspective shift was, how do I engage my kids in an intentional way so that we can have epic moments together and we remember these Saturdays that we have together. So I started to create a game plan my days out with my kids on those Saturdays, and the results were astounding. My relationship with my kids grew, my relationship with my wife grew, and other fathers and other folks started to be attracted to the platform. Started posting them on YouTube, got some attention from it, and then I just felt a calling beyond that to maybe help other dads who had the same struggles I was having, and the Daddy Saturday platform was launched.
That's awesome, man. So I've heard you say the sour state of fatherhood,
yeah,
and what it is now. And what I appreciate what you said is fatherlessness is not only kids that don't have their dads, but kids that have dads that are there but they're not present. And
that's right.
I look at the world we live in now, where we're so distracted with our phones and a television, whatever it may be. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to do a TED Talk about 1.5 years ago at TEDx.
Great talk, by the way.
Thank you so much. And what I found in doing the research for that talk was that there's over 20 million kids in the U.S. that don't have a biological father in the home. So fatherlessness is an absolute epidemic. And if it were classified as a disease, it'd be a national crisis at this point. But even more, I think, prevalent than that is the father who is in the home that just isn't engaged with the kids.
Yep.
And that's the father that I'm really trying to address. That's physically present but emotionally absent. And it's not that dads have bad intentions. They want to be a great dad.
Yeah.
There's just no manual. We just don't know how. As guys, we figure it out on the fly. So I've spent a lot of hours with my kids. In fact, over 13,000 hours on Saturdays at this point. And so for me with my kids, it's really all about, I've learned a lot of things through success and even more through failure.
Yep.
And I just want to help other dads through some dad hacks and some tips and practical ways they can engage their kids and be intentional.
Gotcha. So Daddy Saturday is a movement so that fathers can be more intentional. And you said something that the days are long, but the years are short. And when you said that, I was like, wow, that's very true. How can dads be more intentional with their kids? Could you give us a few tips on that?
Yeah, so I go back to my days where I had a kid strapped to my chest, 2 kids on the shopping cart and one in a stroller, right? Yeah. Those were some long days, a lot of diapers. But the kids are growing up so fast, and I use an app called Parent Q,
nice.
And it shows you how many weeks your kids have left in the home. I also have jars of pebbles in my house, and it shows me how many weeks my kids have left in the home.
What's that app called?
Parent Q.
Wow.
And it's amazing to see it physically because my daughter's, she's more than halfway gone. And she's only 11 years old. You don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
So it is important to realize you have a limited amount of time with your kids in the home. Now, being intentional really comes back to the concept of intentionality is all about planning. And it's all about, do you have a thought process in mind for how you want to activate your kids' hearts, and their minds. And a lot of that just comes through spending time with them.
Yep.
I think intentionality leads to epic moments. Epic doesn't have to be expensive or extravagant. Epic is simply you're just with your kids and you're having fun. And by being intentional, it tends to be epic.
Yep. Mark, how much time we got? 10. How you feeling, bro?
Good.
All right, good. We're going down there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done, brother. We did it. So, being intentional with your children is awesome. And I'm sure our grandparents are the same age. You have dads that say, look, I worked 9 to 5. I worked 2 jobs. I provided for my kids. All this daddy Saturday intentionality, it's too emotional. All you have to do is show up, protect and to provide. For a dad that would say that, what would be your response?
I would say that you're meant for more.
Yeah.
And that every dad is called to this ideal. And, it's no different than when you think of the circus and an elephant, right? They take a baby elephant, they drive a stake really deep into the ground. They tie a rope around that elephant. It fights, but it can never get free, right? That elephant creates a standard, a set of circumstances for itself based on its environment. Yeah. And I think a lot of fathers are the same way. They're like that elephant that gets older. Now it's a tiny little stake in the ground. It could break free if it wanted to, but it only knows what it knows, so it doesn't move forward. A lot of fathers are the same way. They know what they've experienced from their parents or their grandparents, and they see other fathers around them, so they've set this limiting belief, this standard for themselves of what they think fatherhood should be all about. Yeah. And there's more for them, and there's more for their kids. So all my point of intentionality is to saying, look, like you, I'm tired too. I'm exhausted at the end of the week, right? Sometimes I don't feel like engaging my kids. A lot of times I don't feel like it on Saturdays, but the mind is an amazing tool, and it can be conditioned, and it can respond in certain ways. So for any dad, no matter where you're at in that spectrum, I'll tell you this much. Your kids want you to be engaged. They want you to be intentional, and you don't have to start with this massive Disney World type experience. It can be something so small as going for a walk together. You drop your kids off at school. Instead of just dropping them off, park and walk around the school one time together before you let them go in.
Love that.
It can be sitting down at dinner time and putting your phones away, and we play table topics and asking questions at dinner and engaging everyone in conversation. It can be doing bedtime stories and helping your kids tell stories with you and creating a routine and a habit and a ritual with your kids. So my point is, you don't have to be extravagant or go all out. I do that just to make a point, right, and have a principle that you can achieve so much through this concept, but it can be small. It can be in the daily components of being a dad, and believe me, that's what your kids will remember at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
They'll remember those habits, those rituals, those little moments.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I was listening to your TED Talk, and I was surprised when you said, don't be your kid's hero. And I thought to myself, I wonder where Justin's going with this.
Yes.
And you made a great point where, you look at the hero circle, even in marketing, you have like a Yoda, you have a guide, and then you have a villain. And if Yoda would have fought the villain for the Jedi, he wouldn't have learned the lesson. I think that's awesome. Can you go into that concept a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Donald Miller, great author, StoryBrand is his company. He does and talks about this concept in the framework of business. Yeah. And so around parenting, I think the same thing applies. And that is, and we see this day in, day out in the millennial generation where their parents were the hero of their story. You hear about the helicopter parent or the snowplow parent, right? These terms we apply to them. But what happens is the children aren't allowed to fail in their youth. So they get into adulthood. They've never experienced failure at a large level. They don't know how to deal with that. They don't have a mechanism for it. Absolutely. So failure at 28 is a whole lot different than failure at 8. Yeah. So it's far better to let our kids fail at 8 and help walk them through that as their guide than let them get into adulthood and never having experienced failure.
Yes.
And what I would say is that as a dad, it's really hard. It's counterintuitive. We all want to be our kid's hero. Yeah. We all want to wear that cape. We want to have the shirt. You already do, and you always will. That's the point. Mm-hmm. You already are your kid's hero. Yeah. So you don't have to be your kid's hero. You are. They need you to be the guide, not the hero. The other cool thing about this principle is if you do it well, like you, for example, you've got skill sets that I don't have, right? So by bringing you into my kid's life and allowing you to be the guide for them in areas where I have deficiencies, that's only benefiting my kids. Yeah. it's also making me now more of a hero because my kids see me bringing someone like you in,
awesome.
right? So you got to lower your pride, lower your insecurity, and allow other dads, other men to come in that can help build your kids up in areas where you don't have skill sets or assets. And the final thing is when your kids get into adulthood, they don't need a hero. I don't need my parents to be a hero, my dad to be a hero to me at this point in life.
Yeah.
I need my dad to be that guide, right?
Yeah,
as my father and a grandfather to my children. So when you assume that role early on and you do that well, then it's just natural as your kids get older to be the guide when they need it the most.
Yeah. So pride is a word, I think, in our society that people don't know the true definition of. I hear football players say it all the time, have some pride, let's go. And I've always been confused about that because pride is usually, it diminishes a man's role in the house because he's overly prideful. Can you talk about your perspective on pride and how that hinders dads from being as best as they can be, the best dads that they can be?
Man, that is a great question, and it's something that I think as fathers we all need to look introspectively and examine, because I think what you're saying is I can be proud of my team. You were proud to be a Spartan. I'm proud to be a Clemson Tiger, right? You can be proud of that. I'm proud of my kids, and so are you, and we should tell them that as fathers all the time. You can never say it enough to your kids. So being proud and having pride in something like that is very different than being prideful. And too much of anything can be a bad thing, as we know.
Absolutely.
And so when you're prideful, what that means to me is that you're not willing to acknowledge the fact that you need help or that there is a principle that is higher than you, whether that be God or something else in your life. And so when you have pride, you're not allowing other things to come in, and you're leading your life or managing your children like this, like it's in a fist.
Yeah.
Not having pride is having an open hand where you allow things to flow out and come back in. And the big thing with pride to me is that where there is pride, there's also insecurity. And insecurity is a deep-rooted component of pride that causes fathers to have issues. Then insecurity can be from a lot of different things, and insecurity is something that's very hard to overcome. And so as fathers, I think the best thing we can do is examine ourselves and just understand what are those insecurities, what are those triggers when that comes out, and oftentimes it causes us not to be our best self.
Absolutely. So in your experience as being a dad, have you ever got on your kids or yelled at your kids because you weren't happy with yourself?
Oh, all the time. The most common mistake I make as a dad is I let my environment or my circumstances or my insecurities with myself come out and manifest themselves on my kids.
Yeah.
It's far easier to hurt someone you love because you know they'll forgive you than it is to deal with yourself or your own environment, right? If I feel unorganized or if I feel like I haven't done my best, then oftentimes that'll manifest itself in the way I deal with my kids. I talk about this in the book. I remember one day I came home from work, I had a stressful day, things didn't go my way, stuff was piling on. We all know that feeling.
Yeah.
I walked in and I didn't prime myself like I normally do to walk in my house in a positive, pleasant mode to engage my family and shut all that out. I let it slide in with me. I walked in, my boys were in their room, they were supposed to be cleaning their room, they were in there fighting, screaming, yelling. So I walked in, and what did I do? I started fighting and screaming and yelling. I even kicked a toy in the closet, and I looked at myself and I'm like, am I a rage monster or am I a dad, right? And so I had to deal with myself, and I apologized to my kids. And it's so funny how as dads oftentimes we find ourselves manifesting the behavior that we're trying to remove from our kids, right? We don't want to see our kids be angry or have a temper, yet we have a temper with them.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the example they're seeing? It happens to me all the time. It's something that I deal with constantly, and I'm continually working on. How do I flip that trigger? So instead of responding in anger, how do I respond with humor or with grace or with being proud of my kids?
So one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible that I don't think gets talked about enough, when it talks about Christ coming or the Messiah, it says that he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. And one of the most beautiful parts of Scripture and representations of Scripture is that God is a loving and kind Father. And I think that I have this theory called the train theory, where if you live next to a train, I came by and visited you, and the train went by at 12 o'clock and it shook your house. I'm like, dude, how do you live here? And you're like, I've zoned it out. Like, I don't even hear it.
Yep.
I think that's what the world has done. How can fathers, especially Christian fathers, convey that message of love to a world that clearly needs Christ?
Well, I think it starts in the home, right? It starts with your own family and your own kids.
Yeah.
And it starts with the people that are right around you in your own community. I think one thing that I found in this platform, and God spoke to me directly, was he said, Justin, if you want to take this to the world, I can do that, and it's going to be through me. But I need you to start with the people that are right in front of you. Start with your own family. Start with the people that are right around your own home.
Yeah.
Show them love. Show them grace. Show them and help them in their own lives. And I'll take this and make it even bigger. I think the same thing applies to any Christian man. Start in your own home, in your own community, in your own church, in your own place of business, and show love there first. And that's how you take love and make it spread.
Absolutely. So another question about particularly our kids that we have. So I grew up with 5 brothers. And when my precious daughter came out, I was like, what is going on? And then I was like, okay, I can handle a girl. This is great. I fell in love. Then there was another girl.
Yep.
And then I was like, okay, 2 girls. Now I have 3 girls.
Yep.
Do you think there's a difference between raising boys and raising girls?
100%.
How so?
100%. So boys and girls are innately different, right? They're wired different biologically. The way the brain is structured is different, right? The emotions are different. The hormones are different. Everything about them is different, and to a large extent. I think with boys, you feed them and you say go outside and play, and they're happy. Boys are low maintenance for the most part. Girls, anyone that has teenagers certainly knows, or preteens like I do, girls are drama, right? And there's just a lot more emotion that goes into their life. So I think the way that you handle or manage boys and girls is dramatically different as a father.
Yeah.
I think it's also the one commonality, though, is understanding what is your kid's love language. And all kids, no matter if they're a boy or a girl, respond the same to love languages. And so if they need affirmation, that's their positive love language. They need affirmation, whether they're a boy or a girl, right? If they need physical touch, same thing. Maybe a bit different between a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing there is just understanding and having one-on-one time with your kids, regardless of whether they're a boy or a girl, to understand what is their personality, what is their love language, and then more importantly, what is their calling in life, right? What has God innately blessed them with, and how can you foster or nurture that? And that's where I think there's a lot of equality across the board is if they're meant to be a salesperson or an executive or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever that is, or understanding the psychographics, what make up your kids, whether boy or girl, and fostering that to bring that to life.
It's awesome, man. So you're clearly a leader, and you've been around other great leaders. Are there 3 key leadership points that you can leave with all the dads that are watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one is the first leadership point is you need to understand your why, right? And whether that's your why in your life or your why in your business or your why in your family, understanding your why is paramount. Simon Sinek talks about the golden circle, right? And start with your why. I think as a leader, that's the paramount thing is what is your why? My why is to impact 10 million fathers in the next 10 years and to end fatherlessness. Everything I do is rooted in that why. So I'm core and centric to that. I think the second thing is understanding where your gaps are and filling those gaps and surrounding yourself with people that are better than you in those areas. So building out an immense team, and that can be having a coach in your life. It can be looking at your own family. It can be hiring those outside of your family. It can be just surrounding yourself with, through the church or community, others that can help lift you up and help you accomplish that why in areas that you have gaps. And I think the third thing would be to have an intensity and a passion for life. My personal velocity is extremely high, right? And I set myself up for success every single day.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders, the leadership principle is that you need to have a high personal velocity for life and set yourself up for success each and every day by starting your day early, starting your day off right, putting yourself in the right frame of mind, and going out and getting it.
You said high personal velocity. I love that, man. Did you create that?
I stole it from somewhere, man. There's no original idea. Can't tell you where I sourced it from.
Cool, man. I like that.
But I know that's true for me.
Yeah. Wow. So I ask everybody that comes on the show. There's no inevitabilities or predeterminants when it comes to the effects of your father. I look at a guy like LeBron James. He didn't have a dad. Seems to be a great dad himself.
Yeah.
Successful business guy. But then, you look at somebody, I'll use Donald Trump, whether you like him or not. He had a big father figure in his life.
Sure.
And it drove him to be successful. What's your experience like with your dad?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my dad was a really good dad. And I talk about this in the TED Talk and even in the book. My dad wasn't like a perfect dad, like any dad, right? I think the one thing my dad did extremely well is he spent time with me.
Okay.
My dad only missed one of my games in my entire playing career. He coached me all the way through. And that game happened to be the first game I started varsity football as a sophomore. I wasn't supposed to play. I got in and played, and he could never live that moment down with himself, right? The one game he misses, I get in. It's a big moment. But he was always there for me. That's what I remember about my dad, is he spent quality time with me.
That's awesome.
There were certainly some things that my dad did that probably he regrets or I regret now, like any father does in a relationship with their son. But we have a great relationship now, and he would say that he is so proud of me at this point and what I'm doing now and my grandkids and passing that legacy on and helping other fathers.
That's great, man. That's awesome. I love how you honor your dad. So you have a unique perspective where you grew up in Ohio, Big Ten country. You live in ACC, SEC country.
That's right.
Would you rather watch Big Ten football or SEC, ACC football?
Oh, man. Well, I wouldn't say ACC football. I'd say Clemson football, which is much more aligned with SEC football,
Gotcha.
Just at the level that they're at. I love some Big Ten football, man, but the 10 yards in a cloud of dust needs to move on. I think the style of football is changing now.
Yeah.
And the spread and the wide open option type play is something we're going to see in the future. And that's a lot more down south.
Yeah. Do you think football is bigger here in the Midwest or down south?
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm going to make somebody mad no matter what I say with that question. I grew up in Ohio. Massillon was like the pinnacle of where you wanted to get in high school football.
Yeah.
Everybody came out to games. The town shut down. But I've been places in Texas where the same thing happens, right? And in the Carolinas, it's also big. So I think in the Midwest and southern regions in general, football's just big.
Yeah, it's huge. Would you say down where you're at, it's more basketball or it's more football in the Carolinas as a whole? I know it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, so I would say football is bigger,
Okay.
but basketball is also big from a collegiate perspective because the ACC is so strong. You do see a lot of basketball fans as well. Typically, it's the people that have bad football teams that then talk about their basketball team because it's the only thing they can hang on.
Yeah. Like Duke.
That's Duke. That's right.
Yeah. So I've only been on Instagram probably like 8 months now. And I see that a lot of the influencers market to high-level achievers, people that are looking to achieve. They want growth. And when I heard your TED Talk, I thought it was wonderful. And for a guy like me, it resonated because I want to be a great dad. I know it's a gift that the Lord's given me.
That's right.
How do we get your message about Daddy Saturday to those dads that aren't involved or they didn't have a good example of what it means to be a father? How do we get that? How can we be intentional about getting that message out there where we say, dads, look, the biggest impact you can have on the next generation is leaving your mark as a father?
So a couple of things that we've done within the platform to help this happen is I believe that Daddy Saturday, I'm positioning it more as a media brand than using marketing. And by that, I mean I'm taking advantage of every single channel that's out there. So we've got the book, Daddy Saturday, that just came out. So certainly that's one. It's the foundation. It's the playbook, if you will, for fatherhood. A lot of practical advice there. We've got a bonus section within the book where fathers can get more videos, more content, applications to what the book talks about in terms of the principles. We've got an Alexa skill coming out. This is going to be so cool. So if you're a dad and you have any Alexa device, which most of us do today, you could literally say, hey, Alexa, what should I do with my kids on Saturday? And she'll say, it's supposed to be 85 and sunny in Columbus. Why don't you have a water balloon fight? Would you like me to order those from Amazon Prime? You say yes, and they're shipped to your house a day or two later.
Wow.
Now you got the balloons. The app has all the instructions for what you do and how you execute that with your kids. And so it can't be any easier than that, man. And there's all the ideas that are all there. And we've also got a one-to-one model that we're using for a subscription box program.
Okay.
So the Daddy Saturday Dad Box, and once a month you'll get a box shipped to your house. It'll have some of the tools and applications and ways to engage your kids. And by one for one, I mean there's fathers that may not have technology or may not have access to that.
Yeah.
So we will work with community organizations to get those in the hands of fathers that are in need, that would want to be intentional and engaged, but just don't know how.
Yeah. Wow. How can people support your movement or get involved?
So 2 ways. I think one is buy the book, right? I think it's a great way, or gift the book. Father's Day is coming up here in another week. So,
That's right.
And talk about being intentional, man. I launched it on my anniversary.
Nice.
So my wife, 14 years, and she was a big part of why Daddy Saturday existed, as you now know. So that, and then I think the second thing would be go to the website, daddysaturday.com, follow us on social, watch and share the TED Talk. And then we have the Daddy Saturday Foundation, which is our 501c3 organization, which we use to support reaching those fathers in need and helping them engage their kids.
Gotcha. And what's your wife's name?
Heather.
Heather. She's incredible, man.
She is incredible. I out-punted my coverage, man, just like you did.
I did too, brother.
That's right.
Well, dude, I'm glad we're connected, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for being on, bro.
Thanks, man.
Keep it going.
You too.
Being intentional with your kids is not easy, but it's definitely worth it. I had a great time playing with Justin today. He is a beast, and I'm inspired to be a better dad. See you next time on Plank Session.